All right, good friends, welcome back in these momentous times on a momentous show with a momentous guest. I'm sorry if I sound like a sycophant, but, remember when Babe Ruth put his hand to his chest and told the pitcher, you put it here and I'll put it there. And he pointed to the bleachers. The pitcher put it there and he knocked it right out of the park. Well, that's exactly what our guest, Webster Tarpley, did with the Syriza party in Greece and its head, Alexis Tsipras. He said, you put these people here and you mark my words, they're going to go there. And that's exactly what happened. They're running Greece now. Webster, congratulations on your prescience and welcome back to INN.
Well, thank you very much. Now, let me hasten to point out that I had the help of some pretty good analysis, especially from my good friend in Athens, Michael Chiotinis, who had been looking at Syriza from very early on, actually intervening on Syriza and urging them to develop a credible program, right? Rather than a kind of a utopian wish list. Originally, they were focused on long-term demands, all of them very, very positive and edifying, but not especially realistic. So Michael Chiotinis was instrumental in prodding them to boil it down to a number of specific things. Now let me just make some sweeping, glittering generalizations.
If I may, just real quick, and then I'll get out of your way. Suffice it to say, Webster, that happened at about the same time as Occupy Wall Street, and they didn't go that route, did they? The Occupy Wall Street route. They actually made demands, and they managed to get out of the diapers, which is exactly where the Occupy Wall Street people still remain.
That is exactly right. I'm afraid Chris Hayes on MSNBC this week said, imagine Occupy Wall Street taking over a government, something they would never do and they never really wanted to do. But he said that's the idea with Syriza, and this is exactly wrong. And for the U.S. audience, the thing to understand about Syriza is how radically different this is from what you've been sold in the recent past as left liberal, progressive politics, radical left politics, or anything of the sort. And let me just point out a number of things. Syriza is the negation of Occupy Wall Street. Everything is opposite, especially the idea of an economic program, and particularly the fact that the Syriza party, which has now taken – it's essentially one seat or two seats, according to your count, short of the absolute majority in the Greek parliament, and is now governing in a coalition with a conservative anti-austerity group. The Syriza, the essence of Syriza is to struggle for mass traction economic demands, and the most obvious are no more austerity, roll back killer cuts, roll back genocidal austerity measures, right? Don't let more Greeks die. 3,000 suicides are attributed to the dictates, the austerity plan imposed by the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Union. And the hallmark of Syriza is no more austerity, no more cuts. Restore the cuts that have been made. Restore pensions. Restore unemployment benefits. Increase the minimum wage and similar things. So this is absolutely different from the typical left liberal mushhead here in the United States, right? If you take your cue from Amy Goodman or Michael Moore or Noam Chomsky or Gnome, as I've always called him, they don't have any mass traction economic demands. The Democratic Party does not have them. Obama does not even have a jobs program after, 7 years of depression, 6 years of world economic depression and national economic depression. What Syriza has is a series of these mass traction demands. And the second thing, we'll go through some of them. I'd like to illustrate for you the Salonika platform, which is what they just ran on. But there's also this other question: is what do you call yourself, right? This is the New Deal. They say New Deal repeatedly in English. You can see what it is about this country of ours that the world, admires. And it's this idea of the Franklin D. Roosevelt New Deal. So today, one of the Syriza cabinet members called for a pan-European New Deal. So again, economic demands. And I want to tell you, first of all, what you're not going to find. You're not going to find a big hue and cry about global warming. You're not going to find a big hue and cry against infrastructure, be it pipelines, ports, electrical grids, other kinds of economic activity, right, sponsored by government. Most countries in the Western world have anti-infrastructure parties now, and these are funded by George Soros and people like this. But when it comes to Syriza, there's none of that. There's nothing about multiculturalism in the sense of identity politics. This is a program that treats the Greek people as a united entity. In other words, a single entity, and it attempts to deal with the economic crisis that they're facing, to help Greek working people to survive and thrive, and to defend their existence. And at that level, the only distinctions it knows are distinctions of income. Right? Are you rich? Are you not rich? That's the essence of that. So, mass traction economic demands, the absolutely ruthless, rigorous refusal of wedge issues, the things that can split city against country, one ethnic group, one religious group, one racial group against another. None of that. It's all aimed at the bankers, we might say, at the oligarchs, as of course the Greeks say, because this is the homeland of Plato, who taught us about oligarchs. So this is what they ran on. And I urge people here in the United States, study what they have done. You've got to try to imitate this now. We shouldn't just sit back, as Chris Hayes seemed to be doing, and simply say, well, what does this mean for us? Or I've read some other sort of well-meaning or not so well-meaning leftist comments, right? What does this mean for us? It means that this is what you've got to try to duplicate. And let me say without further ado, the United Front Against Austerity is the most explicit, the most obvious anti-austerity entity that we have in this country. I'm very proud to be associated with it. This was founded in New York City just one day before Superstorm Sandy. I think it was the 29th and 30th of October at your facility at the time, right? So there we were. And the emphasis on the New Deal, you can see the United Front Against Austerity and the Tax Wall Street Party are the most explicit, the most coherent expressions of the New Deal that we have. So in that sense, the spirit of Syriza, if you want to get close to something that looks like Syriza, well, it's the United Front Against Austerity as a think tank, as a programmatic entity. And then it's, of course, the Tax Wall Street Party, which says we're going to solve this problem that we have, this economic crisis. This is going to be at the expense of Wall Street.
Well, hold on. We have a time problem because we got to go on break. Friends, we're speaking with Webster Tarpley. He called it. Alexis Tsipras and Syriza are now running the country of Greece. We'll be right back with them right after this. Good friends, welcome back. Let's get right back to it. Webster Tarpley is our guest. Tarpley.net is his website. You can get lots of great information there. A lot of his interviews are there, including everyone that he's ever had here on INN. And Webster, you were talking about the program in Greece that's coming out, and I just want to add a reminder a little bit later. I'm going to circle back and talk about what the Greeks could be up against, if we can do that too. So back to where you were.
Absolutely, and I'm sure they're aware of it. Let's just start with compare Syriza, which is the characteristic expression of the what can we say, progressives, leftists, New Dealers, because they certainly qualify. Compare that to Occupy. And let's just look at it from a number of points of view. Program is the main thing we're going to talk to. Let's just mention the idea that Syriza has an articulated program of economic demands. Above all, economic. There are some demands for re-democratization, to diminish the authoritarian character of government, right, to restore workers' rights and things like that. But there's nothing like campaign finance reform or things like this as a big topic, right? I'm sure they're sympathetic to reducing the power of money, but their idea is to reduce the power of the oligarchs. So program, and again, it means mass traction economic demands. It doesn't mean give more money to the Securities and Exchange Commission or something like this. There's the question then of leadership. You will have seen this remarkable individual, Alexis Tsipras, former member of the youth organization of the Greek Communist Party, leftist activist, obviously a remarkable individual. The finance minister, Varoufakis, looks like he's also a very special kind of person. The defense minister, and this is important too, if you're a right-winger listening in, and if you're a libertarian, you're a right-winger, why don't you look at this guy Kammenos, Kammenos. He speaks French. He comes on the internet giving speeches in French. This Kammenos is the guy who said, Europe is run by German neo-Nazis. So attacking Merkel and Schäuble, the finance minister of Germany.
And that there's reparations that they still owe Greece.
Reparations that he's not. In other words, what you see is doing is he's building up a great rhetorical platform for the for the negotiations.
One second.
They have leaders. Listen, you anarchists who supported Occupy, you dupes. You've got to have leaders, and you can't pretend that you don't have leaders, because even if you pretend you don't have them, you will have them. They'll just be meeting behind your back and duping you. Yes.
I just wanted to say, Varoufakis, the finance minister, first of all, he used to teach right there in our audience in the University of Texas, right? Number one. Number two, do you have a relationship with him?
Above all, for him, right? He gave a speech. He sent a 20-minute address to the founding conference of the United Front Against Austerity. And this is now the finance minister. This is the guy who says that the time for subjection is over, that this suffocating austerity imposed these cuts and the destruction of the social safety net. This is impossible. Varoufakis also, to show that his heart's in the right place, and this is absolutely critical. The International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, and the European Commission, made up of Eurogarchs, Eurocrats, and not a few neo-fascists also. But they imposed this thing where the Greek government has to start firing government employees. And it turned out that one of the groups of victims were the cleaning ladies, the cleaning women, the charwomen, if you will, of the Greek Foreign Ministry. So he said, I'm rehiring all of them. It's a group of 30 or 40 or 50 women who had been keeping this ministry, right, the buildings, this, cabinet department, keeping it clean. And how did he get the money? He fired a bunch of consultants, and these consultants were generally bloodsuckers from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and so forth. And those people were getting rich off the tragedy of Greece, right? So he said, you are all fired, and I'm going to rehire these charwomen. So there's a leader, okay? Occupy, you're anarchists, you don't believe in leaders, but the Greeks emphatically do. So program, leadership. Then there's the question of organization. How was this assembled, right? Syriza is an increasingly united group, but still not sufficiently united. It's a kind of a united front or confederation, hopefully becoming a federation and then a single body of left parties, grouplets, groupuscules, organizations, all manner of formations. Some of them have their identities still carved out. Some of them are tending to merge. And that was patiently put together on a united front basis. And again, we're the united front against austerity. So we try to incorporate this kind of stuff. So you want to have an organization, and you've got to subordinate your demands. For example, somebody might say, well, for me, the polar bears are the be-all and end-all. Sorry, you've got to subordinate that. For me, it's what's going on in Indonesia, East Timor, whatever. No, that's got to be subordinated. We're doing mass traction economic demands, things that the average person can recognize as being a lifeline, right? A means of survival in the midst of an economic crisis. And then there's strategy. And the strategy has been, don't get suckered into approving any austerity measure any time. No way. And they tried, right? These were like the temptations of Christ in the wilderness, right? They were offering all different things. And Tsipras and Varoufakis and the rest of them correctly realized, no, you've got to reject all these things. Now, it's obviously the case in Greece that the depression has been extremely severe. It has never been really a rich country. This was raped by the British at the end of World War II. By the spring of 1945, 70 years ago, most people in the United States hated Churchill about as much as they hated Hitler because of what the British had done in massacring the Greeks. This is where they sent in this General Scobie, and Churchill said, treat that like a conquered province, right? Don't let those Greek communists or leftists or socialists make any kind of a comeback. Churchill was betting on the monarchists who had supported Hitler. So all of that is the history. But now those communists, even though they're really not communists anymore, have made a comeback. But notice again, in a coalition with conservative anti-austerity people who do not accept the idea that Germany should dictate the economic destruction of Greece. So this is the economic crisis that they've gone through is generated. It comes off the U.S. and British world derivatives crisis of 2008, 2009. It's also magnified by the fact that Greece had come under the influence of Goldman Sachs, and Goldman Sachs had sold them a bunch of derivatives with the express argument that by buying these derivatives, the Greeks could mask their public debt and therefore meet the criteria for joining the euro, which for them is a good idea. Let me just make a parenthesis on this, right? You see a lot of half-baked, misinformed or worse people, especially in the English-speaking world, right, British and U.S., saying, oh, they've got to get out of the euro, or they want to get out of the euro. No, no, no. The Syriza position has always been they wish to remain within the euro because this is to their advantage. A lot of people just don't get that. Oh, we're against the euro. Well, if you're against the euro, you're essentially acting as a tool for the British and the British pound, and or for the U.S. dollar and the Federal Reserve System, because that's the competition. The euro is the competition, and the Greek, the party, for political reasons, they realized if you come along with a fairly radical program of the type that Syriza has, and then turn around and say we're leaving the euro, that is going to make you vulnerable to scare propaganda. And the scare propaganda was tried in the past month. We saw Merkel of Germany coming out. We saw Samaras, the defeated austerity ghoul prime minister, IMF puppet in Greece. They came out and said, if you vote for Syriza, Greece will leave the euro. What Merkel means when she says Greece will leave the euro is she's saying she will force Greece out of the euro, which I can't imagine how she could really think she could do that, but she said she was going to try. That was supposed to scare the Greek voter. Then Hollande, right before Charlie Hebdo, 2 days before Charlie Hebdo, Hollande came out in that famous interview where he said that he wanted the sanctions against Russia to come to an end. He also said, look, the Greeks have the perfect right to vote for whoever they want. So he undercut the scare propaganda. But you can still find people. You could find people on Russia Today or CBS News saying Syriza wants to leave the euro. No, they don't. They are not fools. Leaving the euro at this point is for fools. And I'll tell you why. You go back to the drachma, right? The drachma, the old Greek currency, the drachma had never coexisted with the full fury of the derivatives armory, right? The credit default swap in particular. There never was a time when you had both this huge derivatives thing, which came after 2000, and a free-floating or a drachma that was even within some kind of European mechanism, right? The drachma was essentially phased out 1999, 2000.
I still have a few drachmas, but look, the time is...
But look, here's the thing. Where are we going?
Webster, we got to go on break. Or you're going to be cut off. All right, we're going to be right back. We got to take the top of the hour break. Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley, as he so often does, taking us down and laying out the details. We'll be right back with him right after this. Friends, welcome back. Webster Tarpley is our guest. We try to get Webster on at least once a month or so to get his unique perspective. And unique it is. He has been talking about the events that finally transpired in Greece just this last Sunday, the rise and an election of the Syriza party. They got 2 seats short of forming an outright government. They had to make a coalition. And Alexis Tsipras, the relatively young leader of that party. That's another thing, Webster. One of the things that they decided early on was to pass the mantle from the older folks to the younger generation.
Well, if you're dealing with somebody like Noam Chomsky, yeah, I can understand that perfectly well. But the situation in different countries is different. So we should. I wouldn't make too much of that, right? That's fine as far as it goes. You want to get rid of Michael Moore? That's fine. Get rid of Gnome. Get rid of Ellsberg, right? Those people are all. They've seen their day, whatever it was. Well, so, but let me get right into the economic stuff, okay?
Let me just remind you, though, I do want to get your opinion on what the Greeks and the rest of the world have to watch out for, the dirty tricks, the assassinations that have happened in Greece.
Let's get the positive side, and then we'll use the last segment for
very good. Let's go.
What the problems could be, because they're facing payment deadlines. Those are the most serious. Here, if you listen to Varoufakis, you also have to realize these people are not angels, right? They're not paragons. Varoufakis once worked for the PASOK, the Socialist International Party, right? The party that has now almost ceased to exist. So they have all kinds of experiences, right? And a lot of them have British university training, and you got to see what that adds up to, right? It's okay to be anti-American, but you want to do it for the right reasons, maybe not the reasons that the British would have recommended. But let's get to the positive side. Varoufakis was on the Canadian radio program As It Happens on Friday night, just before the election, which was Sunday. And this Canadian woman reporter was giving him a hard time, saying, "Wait a minute, you hired the money, didn't you?" That was what Coolidge said about the reparations out of World War I. So you borrowed that money, didn't you? You signed for it. You hired the money. And Varoufakis said, look, you look at the General Motors salvation package, right? The saving of General Motors involved something called Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, Chapter 11 bankruptcy does not really exist for countries, but in the case of General Motors, it did exist, and thank goodness. And in the course of the Chapter 11 bankruptcy of General Motors, the bondholders lost virtually everything. You can find a study. There's one woman, you can see her on the internet, CNN, I think, from that time, and she had $70,000 worth of General Motors bonds. And she came out of that with some stock that was initially worth about $200, maybe a little bit more now. If you're going to save a large concern, a large firm, company, or a country, you're going to have to write down the debt. You're going to have a haircut. And on the international plane, what Syriza always cites is the London Debt Conference of 1953, where this was for the benefit of Germany primarily. By that time, it was West Germany, right? The German Federal Republic, BRD. The German debt was radically reduced. And I believe other Axis countries got some of their debt reduced. There were other countries that benefited from debt reductions, debt write-downs, haircuts at London in 1953. So the German debt was massively written down. So why not allow Syriza, which never, attacked everybody and occupied everybody in Europe, was not a part of the Holocaust or any other things. All of these special aids that were extended to Germany when it became important to save the country, and I'm all for it, that should now be extended to Greece. And they're asking, there's a precedent. So of the debt that they have, it's about 320 billion euros for a country of 11 million people, and their initial demand is that this should be cut in half. Now, their program, and this is again for the Occupy Wall Street people, who they seem to be saying, we have no demands, we don't want to have any demands, we think demands are dangerous because we might win our demands. And that, I'm afraid, that is pretty much prima facie case of non compos mentis. So they have this is now the National Reconstruction Plan of Syriza, and it's also known as the Thessalonica Platform or Thessalonica Program. Thessalonica or Salonika being this important Greek port. Confronting the humanitarian crisis, restarting the economy and promoting tax justice, national plan to restore employment, and transform the political system to deepen democracy. Now let's just go through it. It's a $12 billion program, and first of all, humanitarian measures, right? Save people's lives. Start providing free electric current to 300,000 families who are below the poverty line. American-style food stamps go to those same families. Free medical and drug program for those same people. Provide homes for the even worse. 30,000 homeless families get homes to live in. And if your pension is currently below 700 euros per month, which is what? $800 a month, $200 a week, not easy to live on, they're going to give you a 13th month. So it's like a Christmas bonus. Public transport, subway and bus for free. Reduce the value-added tax on
is that for everybody free, or is that for pensioners?
I think that's for everybody. And then cut the diesel fuel, or I'm sorry, the heating oil used for homes. Okay, then real economy is to stop tax liens against small business, against low incomes, and against families that have had tax problems. Freeze all of that, so we don't have the people being harassed when they should be working. Cut the existing real estate tax. It means, in particular, everybody's primary residence. If you own a home, this is going to be tax-free or have it cut, and I believe no foreclosures. No income tax on anybody up to 12,000 euros. And it means also, I believe, no taxes on anybody's income up to 12,000 euros. So tax reform from the bottom up. Canceling private debt for everybody who is below the poverty line. And if you're above the poverty line, the most of your income that can be taken by debt payments is 1/3. So a national development bank, the institution of a minimum wage, which they have not had, the increase of the current minimum wage from 586 euros to 751 euros. It's almost, 30% or 25 to 30%. So you get the idea for that. Now, the third one is labor. This is return to national labor contracts, that you cannot have the hire and fire society, remove all of the ways that the IMF made firing people more simpler, and then 300,000 new jobs. This is the job program, the job creation. So this is in the public sector, in the private sector, and in the social economy. 300,000 new new jobs. Unemployment benefits today go to only the aristocracy of labor. 10% of those who are unemployed today get an unemployment check. Everybody who's unemployed should get it. The fourth one is the civic refoundation of the state and its institutions, reform local governments, increase representative government, increase the representativity of parliament and new institutions of direct democracy. One of the things they have is, if you're a member of parliament, to take away your parliamentary immunity, which there has been much abused, referendum, recall, things like this, more freedom of information. Here's a very important one. The oligarchical governments of Greece, in particular this last one, Samaras, New Democracy, right-wing, pro-IMF, they were in the habit of giving away the licenses for television stations and not collecting any fees. So now they're going to say, the new government is going to say, if you want it licensed to broadcast, you're going to have to pay for the license, and you're also going to have to, put on some kind of representative programming, right? Not that Soros and the Koch brothers buy up everything. Then we have severe measures against tax evasion, right? I know the Republican Party is the party of tax evasion. Libertarians generally support tax evasion. Get rid of tax loopholes for the rich. Ban the transfer of capital to foreign countries. In other words, ban flight capital. Don't let people smuggle that stuff out. Suppress the smuggling of gasoline and oil. And then try to get the European Union to reorient things like the European Regional Fund and certain funds that are in Brussels, which is supposed to deal with economically distressed areas, to try to get that mobilized in a better way. So it's a European New Deal financed by the, I believe, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. And there's also this question that Germany had imposed some debts on Greece during the Nazi occupation of Greece in 41-44, and they would like to finally cancel those definitively. And you can see that's a way of reminding Schäuble. If Schäuble believes that there's collective guilt for the Greeks in the fact that they owe some money, then Schäuble better imagine where he would look under a collective guilt scheme, sitting on top of all of that, everything that was looted. So I hope we don't have to go down that road, because that's not going to help anybody. Now, you've noticed, let me just go through some of the things that Tsipras did on the first
You got about 30 seconds for the commercial. Go ahead.
Okay. The first thing he did, he went to the anti-Nazi memorial called Kaisariani, right? A massacre by the Nazis. The second thing he did was to have the Russian ambassador come and visit him. I'm sure he's concerned about a NATO coup. I'm sure he's concerned about various forms of Gladio. So this Russian ambassador brought a special letter from Putin, and the Syriza government then became the first in Europe to say to the Euroglocs in Brussels, stop it already with the Russian sanctions over Ukraine. We're not interested.
I think he was also sworn in without the bishop being present. I think it was a non-religious ceremony.
I'm sure
but anyway,
some of them wanted it, some of them didn't want it. I wouldn't make too much of this. I think it would be good politics.
I'm not making anything of it. It was just a segue for me to get in and say we'll be right back with Webster Tarpley just after this. Let's get right back to it. This is our last segment with Dr. Webster Griffin Tarpley. Tonight we're talking about Greece and what's going on there, what they're up against, what kind of changes hopefully we can see coming down the pike. Webster, you got one more segment. Let's finish off some of these
Let's just go
points.
back to the first day in office of Alexis Tsipras, Monday, 26 January. He went to this anti-Nazi memorial, a site of a massacre by the SS near Athens. This sets the stage for the negotiations with Merkel. Then he met the Russian ambassador, first foreign guest. The Russian ambassador brought a letter from Putin, congratulatory message. Now, since we've mentioned Russia, I would regard the role of Russia as absolutely critical. There is a danger of NATO coup d'etat, right? We've seen that in 1967 with the fascist Greek colonels backed by NATO. There's no reason why that wouldn't happen again. That guy Breedlove that you've seen shooting his mouth off around the Ukraine, right? The NATO commander, U.S. Air Force 4-star general, he would do that in the batting of an eye. So here's what I would recommend. First of all, and we've had reports over the last couple of years that this is already set up, that Syriza and Russia have some kind of an understanding of how Russia would act to block a NATO coup, be it with an ultimatum, be it with warships. We'll have to see. But the most important thing I would recommend is that Russia should provide Greece with an immediate stabilization loan of about $5 billion. Remember last year, maybe you remember the numbers, Tom, but the Russian loan to Ukraine under Yanukovych about a year ago was
right, it was
what?
$15 billion or something, wasn't it?
$15 billion is what I have too. So you throw $15 billion down the Yanukovych rat hole, even though it's important real estate. Right now, for less than that, I would say $5 billion now with a possible $5 billion later. You realize when a new government comes in like this and they're isolated, they need working capital. So somebody's got to provide that. If the Russians have any brains, Putin, I think, would be well advised to do $5 billion now and $5 billion later. That entire program that I went through, right, the Salonika platform, the total price tag on that is $12 billion. So you could, in effect, pay for all of that and simply tell the European Commission with the Eurogorks and Eurocrats and austerity ghouls to go jump in the lake. So the way it went then on the Monday, just to get back to that interesting chronology, the anti-Nazi memorial, the Russian ambassador, a protest that the European Union statement from Mogherini, she's not the worst person in the world, but the Italian foreign policy boss, she was confused on this one, right? That somehow there should be new sanctions on Russia. This entire thing in eastern Ukraine now was that the Ukrainian Nazis were shooting across the ceasefire line, incessantly shelling the pro-Russian positions, and eventually they simply had to go across and mop up these Ukrainians. On Wednesday, the question of privatization. This is just beautiful. One of the conditionalities of the IMF was to force Greece to sell off its national treasures. There were even reports for a while that the IMF was going to force Greece to sell the Parthenon and the Acropolis. Well, no, they wouldn't do that. One of the demands of this government is they want the Elgin marbles back. The frieze on the Parthenon was stolen by Napoleon, I think, and then stolen by the British. Right now it's in the British Museum. They want that back. But in particular, the port of Piraeus, which is a very important port, that's the port of Athens, and the port of Salonika or Thessalonica, and the main electrical utility were supposed to be sold off to the Chinese under IMF conditionalities. Isn't this great? The oligarchs of the IMF working hand in hand with the low-wage bonzos of China, right? Costco in particular. No, says the government. Tsipras says no. Varoufakis says no. The other members of the government say no. The Chinese government today says they are deeply concerned. Well, that's just too damn bad, Beijing. You see, the atrophy of economic activity coming from the U.S. has led lots of people around the world to think that China is the only source of economic dynamism and so forth. This is very refreshing that this government decided to abort those privatizations, even though the treaty or the contract, so to speak, with China was signed by that guy Kamenos, the guy from the independent Greeks, right? The conservative, right-wing, anti-austerity people. He's the one who signed that agreement, but this government has essentially shredded it. We're told that Merkel is shocked that Tsipras was able to form a coalition so quickly and so effectively. Merkel had hoped that it would take a long time, that Tsipras would be weakened, that he would struggle, that he'd be discredited, there would be drift. Correctly, Syriza said, we're going to have a coalition with Kamenos. This is Tsipras in particular. And a lot of them say, oh, but he's a right-winger. He's a right-winger. Well, it's just the same thing. Mass traction economic demands, don't go overboard on this global warming stuff, mass traction, and make the deal you need to make to take power fast. And as far as the economic stuff goes, Kaminos is a reliable enemy of any Merkel diktat of austerity or anything of the sort. Now, we've had a whole chorus of this, right? Martin Schulz, German, of the Social Democratic Party, visited Athens. This is the head of the Social Democratic faction in the European Parliament. He says, how dare you violate the conditions of the bailout? Because these privatizations were the first bailout condition that they violated. And then we've got Juncker, the president of the European Commission. He says a debt reduction is not on the radar. Moscovici, the European Commission guy for economics, he's also protesting. So there's quite a chorus here. Tomorrow, Friday the 30th, Tsipras will meet with Jeroen Dijsselbloem. Jeroen Dijsselbloem is the finance minister of the Netherlands, and he is the chairman of the finance ministers group of the European Union. And then we're going to have on the 8th of February a European Union foreign ministers meeting that will obviously be most centered on Greece. We already just had today, Thursday, the 29th, we had a meeting of the European Union foreign ministers on the sanctions against Russia. Now, the idea is that the preparations of these sanctions goes forward. However, even the presence of the new Greek foreign minister, his name is Kotsias, the presence of Kotsias of the Syriza government has forced the softening of the language, and I think the actual showdown on this will be on February 8th. So let's not assume that Syriza, was unable to stop it. They still may be able to stop it. And then finally, by the end of February, I think by the 28th of February, that is when the final tranche, the final payment on the bailout loan to Greece is going to be delivered. Or not delivered, and that will then be a crisis. So there might be some people around Merkel, right? Some bully thinkers who think, well, we can break the back of Greece within a few weeks by cutting off the money. That's exactly where somebody rational should come in, and that would be Russia with Putin. 5 billion now, 5 billion later. I would recommend the Chinese government is going to have to get over the fact that they can't expect to be the owners of Piraeus and the owners of Salonika, right? Those are going to belong to the Greek people. So I think it's beneficial to avoid foreign takeovers and foreign diktats, right? So the Chinese diktat in the long run is maybe not any more palatable than the Brussels or IMF diktat, right? Just different. So you get the idea. I also hope that Putin will have the sense to reorient his entire foreign policy in the direction of Syriza. But
they're already switching that pipeline, right? It's going to go through the South Stream pipeline. I think
that was because it was blocked. Now Syriza may open